Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of Behind the Curtain in association with WeWork.
Episode 10, the very last Behind the Curtain ever of Series 1, because we are coming back.
Yeah, we will be back.
Yeah.
Tonight is no different. We usually have a fantastic studio audience. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Also, we can't do this without sponsors and partners, so thank you so much, WeWork, and thank you, Sage. Thank you so much.
We've made it to the last show.
We have.
Our entrepreneur guests so far this series have raised over $500 million for their businesses.
That is a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
We have two incredible entrepreneurs on the show tonight.
Thank you.
One of them exited his business for 115 million euros and has been on fire ever since.
Ooh, the clue is in the name. Also, another clue that we gave out is you very nearly had a dragon as a president. Do we know who he is?
Any guesses? Give a huge round of applause for Colm Lyon.
And Gavin Duffy. Come on in. Up on the stage, guys.
I'm in this one, aren't I?
Yes, you are indeed. Thank you so much for coming in.
Gavin has a sore leg. So
Yes.
What happened to you?
I pulled a calf muscle.
Okay.
Sorry, this is going to sound terribly grand. Last Friday, skiing.
Oh, God love you.
I've been skiing for 21 years, never had an injury. And
Was it carrying them or did you actually fall?
no, I fell, but the really awkward part of it was that there'd be no snow. We were skiing in Sestriere I didn't intend to start talking about it, but we were in Sestriere in Italy and there was no snow, and then there was a big dump on Thursday night, which was great, so we went out early to get the fresh snow. But after being skiing on ice for the few days, it was a bit sticky.
Yeah.
But, well, if you're not sort of, if you don't have a significant other, this mightn't mean much to you, but coming down a slope,
Yeah.
my darling wife of 26 years on the 17th of March skied across the front of me, just going slightly out of control, went across, I went over, and before I hit the ground I knew I had a problem.
So it's her fault. No,
I'm definitely not saying that on Behind the Curtain, because then it'll go on record, because she's now denying it. She said, I went close to you. There was no need to fall over, you know?
You're only putting it on.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys.
But it's sore.
Thank you so much for coming on, right? Like, it means a lot to us. You guys are big in Ireland. You know, well, we think you are anyway.
Yes, it's very small.
Kept the best till the end.
Of course. It is the last one, so thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, we really do appreciate it. So we're going to start from the early years, right? Because that just makes sense. And obviously we did a bit of research, and we're all outstanding professionals, right?
Of course.
But when we looked up Wikipedia, it said that you weren't always Gavin Duffy.
Oh yeah, that came out during the presidential election.
Yeah, so it was Liam.
You changed your
Duffy.
name.
Because Gavin was cooler, he said.
Well, I started out in radio, and funny enough, the name Liam Duffy, for some reason, back then, you know, you had to have a cool name, and it wasn't my choice. I was actually literally going on a program, and the producer said,
Name doesn't work.
You know,
Gavin, way better.
And so, can you think of something? You know, and I was like literally stuck. You know, and I just thought of the Gavin Duffy in history. You know, and I just said Gavin Duffy. And then when it became, it actually caught on. And then I decided, well, I don't want to be passing myself off as, because people now start saying, are you related to Charles Gavin Duffy? And no, we're pig farmers. And so I spelled it Gavin, and then it goes on, and then years later, you changed your name. Was it because you were involved in a crash as you were an 18-year-old? And no, that had nothing to do with it. But
So what do friends and your wife call you? Is it Gavin or Liam?
Oh, that's very.
Or what? But your wife could be something different altogether.
No, but you've hit it on the nail in the head. Nobody calls me Liam.
Nobody.
Right? Okay. And I think that's because, my wife of 26 years, before that, sort of, other people might have called me Liam, but it was now, it's Gavin, because I met him as Gavin, type of thing. So it's a bit unusual when your mother starts calling you the new name.
The new name.
Yeah, but like, it's you know, it's sort of called, like, you know, it became an issue, as I said, the president. The number of people who've changed it, you know, it's not that I'd robbed a bank or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that comes later, actually.
Yeah. How they robbed me. Yeah. But
You can't speak poorly of the banks while we're here.
all right. Okay.
No, you can't. You speak openly. Well, look, we're obviously going to go into everything with both of you guys, what you're currently doing and what you've done recently enough, and we're going to Dragons Den and all that thing. But we want to go back because we want to go back what you were like in school. Like, what were you like, if you can remember now?
You're going to ask Colm some questions.
Yeah, we are. You know,
No one ever called me Liam.
Yeah.
No,
No.
you haven't changed your name at all, have you?
Yeah.
You haven't. Okay, well, look, we'll start with
no.
you, Colm. Like, what were you like in school? What were you like growing up?
His name was Hegarty.
Yes.
But he wanted to trade off Lyon's tea when he was, and he made up that name.
Is that true?
Oh, so like I don't know. I have 5 brothers. I
Right.
suppose that probably would have defined my early years.
Older or younger?
Growing up, I was number 4 of 6, which is how I was typically introduced by my dad as well. This is number 4. Thanks, Dad.
It's number 4.
Yeah, this is number 4. Yeah, he came after number 3. So yeah, and 5 of us were born in 6 years,
Okay.
so we were very close in age.
Yeah.
And then the mistake came years later.
This is recorded, you know?
Yeah. No, so we would have been very close. I suppose we still are, in fact, quite close to 6 of us, 6 boys. Like, so it
Yeah.
tends to be. So I think when you're in the middle part of a family like that, you know, you have to look after yourself. So you've got to make sure that you kind of protect your position from the older ones.
Protect
and
your
the-
Did you find yourself quite entrepreneurial in school?
No, but I mean, where I grew up, like if you wanted something, you had to go and do something to get it. So
Yeah.
we had people give out about me talking about it, but a paper round, right, like anybody else. We called it a newspaper delivery service, and
Very fancy.
yes, yeah. And it was actually a going concern that we subsequently sold, right, as a business. But it was, and that would have sustained myself and my brothers. And I think at a very young age, you know, you get up in the morning, you deliver newspapers or whatever.
Yeah.
And in those days, you would have had. I did learn a lesson very early at that stage because my eldest brother deemed himself to be the landlord of a particular road in the neighbourhood, which I had to rent from him.
Mafia, sorry, in a way?
No, I had to pay him a rent in order to be able to sell newspapers on that road. So
That's before they went into the drug deal.
But so yeah, I mean, I you know told the story before that, you know, I'm a classic example of somebody that went from the first time we did the leaving cert, couldn't work out why I hadn't, you know, the points to do anything, and I called around to a neighbour who looked at it and said the problem is he didn't even matriculate, so I'd actually failed the leaving cert when I did it the first time round, and I suppose one of the biggest lessons would have been, a great friend of mine turned around and said you need to, you know, you need to go back and do it again. And, you know, and it was kind of like years later when you look back, I suppose you realize that actually failing to such a catastrophic level wasn't, you could overcome it. And you could actually recover from it, you know.
Yeah.
And that was, John Teeling was the guy who happened to be the neighbour who gave me that advice at the time. And it was like, he was an incredible kind of lucky moment to meet somebody like him at that, when you're a young guy.
Yeah, of course.
You know, 16, 17 at the time. And he would have been a big influence on me. And he was laughing, he's saying, well, I saw you on your mum's bike, like selling newspapers. There was a queue for petrol at the time because there was some strike or other in the early 80s. And I used to get my mum's bike and get extra newspapers. I used to sell them for twice the cover price for people in the queue because they didn't know where to go, right? So you charge twice the normal price. And he thought this was like really funny, and he thought this was a businessman. And, you know, I said, well, no, it's not. It's just, it's that. So you're looking back, maybe you might see things like that, but it's also easy to pick them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
But he was my first kind of real big influence in terms of like, I was fascinated by what he used to do and the stories he used to tell about businesses and about being in business.
What about you, Gavin? Growing up in school, you moved to Drogheda.
It was Liam back then.
But
Liam moved to Drogheda,
you know, when Colm does mention John Teeling, I would say to anybody, if you can, you know, now we use the term mentor, but you know, it wasn't around in my time and so on. But if you're lucky enough to get to know people like a John Teeling in your case, who I still think was probably the best lecture
Yeah.
ever in UCD. You know, it's a blessing, and I now looking back realize that, you know, at later times in my career, I worked to very dynamic people, and you learn so much from people like that. So, you know, I was very special. Yeah, I was. You know, it's funny when I hear Colm sort of say about being on the paper round and things like that. You know, the things we did as sort of teenagers, because, you know, apparently we've had some success in business sense. I think people place more store in them now, and so on. You know, because if you were to talk to people in my hometown in Drogheda, I think it's wildly exaggerated how successful my pet shop was, which I opened at aged 14. You know, and you know, we had a pub on the main street, and there was a spare unit beside it, and I'd come across some amazing Angora rabbit, and you know how rabbits...
How do you come across an
but-
Angora rabbit?
Yeah, well, there was another guy, Mick Megan, who sort of, you know, his family had a business down the street, but he had this... But anyways, you know how rabbits breed. So, I mean, it just, it was incredible. So I was breeding, you know, I was selling them, I was doing very, very well. And I learned a lot very early about the importance of supply and demand. So Colm was able to charge cover price double for the newspaper because he's got a captive market and they have to buy the paper there and then. And, you know, aged 14, first big lesson in business is don't get greedy. I said to myself, wow, if the rabbits are selling that well, mice breed much more quickly, you know? And I'd known one or two guys, you know, there's always that type of weird guys in your class in school who like to go around with a mouse in their pocket, and you think everybody is like that. No, they're weird, okay? And so, but
it's a niche market.
But I started breeding mice, right? Now, I mean breeding mice, okay?
This is the stuff that wasn't on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Who will be now?
And they were hundreds and then thousands, and they just...
Look, they weren't rats.
Yeah, but I had no customers for all these mice. So sometimes you have to make a tough decision in business. So one night I decided to release the mice, okay? And we lived on West Street, which is the main street, right? And I released these. I forgot all about the mice from then on. But 2 years later, Mrs. Foley, the late Mrs. Foley, she was married to the mayor, is down visiting my mother, so the proper china is out because the mayor's wife is visiting. Annie, she said, that's my mother's name. Have you noticed these strange coloured mice coming from Fair Street, which is the street behind? So yeah, my sort of mice happily met up with the local Drogheda dark mice, my white mice, etc. And we had a type of piebald mice in Drogheda. And I'm confessing here for the first time publicly, I'm responsible for those. But it was a huge... No, but to be surprised as a kid, it sounds, you know, sort of weird, but you do learn about sort of supply and demand in a market. You know what I mean? And actually, the secret is to keep, you know, you should be able to meet the demand, but sometimes the less you have of something, the more you can charge for it.
I think back in those days too, like everybody did everything. You know, like you cut the neighbour's grass, you did everything, you cleaned gutters.
Well, you didn't have a phone in front of you.
You didn't have a phone, and so if you wanted anything, like you spent your summers, as I say, like doing jobs around the neighbourhood, like for people, and you worked, you know, and you worked while you were at school. So
just on that then, like just with obviously being 2019, do you think that the whole kind of like with that era, right, it was real, you worked for your money. If you wanted sweets in the local shop, it was real, well, go do something and earn some money for it. Instead of nowadays, it's real kind of, Mom, Dad, give us some money. Yeah, there you go. Okay, thanks, down the shop. You know, there's no real kind of like go out and do a paper round or breed mice or rabbits or whatever you want to do. But there's not really any of that now because it's just handed. Do you like? Because I know it was obviously handed to some people back then. But it's different now.
Like maybe I still think there's a choice there. You know, and I think that like people can make the choice as to whether they want to do that or not. You know,
okay, good answer.
Or whether they want to encourage their kids to to do things. Like I'm not saying the way I did because. You know, I think it's important to let people do things the way you didn't, right? But at the same time, to have a good, you know, if you give them their subsistence, which is fine, right? But if they want that trip or if they want, you know, those pair of runners or whatever, well, then maybe you got to do something, you know, extra to get that, like, you know. And so, mean, I think it's great, like, that kids work, and I would always encourage it. I think the learning, and even with young kids, like, I can see what they learn through that experience is really, really invaluable, you know, particularly if it's hospitality or something like that. It's just brilliant. I would always encourage it.
Yeah, you left school. Did you go straight into, because you were in banking for a long time, did you go straight into banking straight out of school?
No, what happened was when I did the trial run in the Leaving Cert, and then I did it again. And commerce at that time was 4 Cs, 16 points, and I got 4 Cs, just in time, as they say. And so I got in on the raffle into UCD. And then I did a Master's in Management Science straight after, which is kind of like mathematical programming, computer. Well, there weren't computers back then, but it was kind of like, they were kind of, well, they were, but they were kind of slightly different. And so I did that for a year, and then basically everybody had emigrated at that time. This is like 1985, and there was like, it took me at least 18 months, I think, to get the first job. So it was like, it was very bleak. My brothers had all emigrated, and certainly all the friends. And there was a joke about, in Dublin Airport, there was a big IDA ad with, you know, we've got the brightest graduates in the world, and somebody took it and marked all the ones, about 5 of them were left in the country because everybody else had all gone. So it was very bleak. And I got a 3-month contract with a bank. And
it turned into a lot longer.
Stayed into 14 years, yeah.
What bank was it back then?
It was Ulster Bank.
Ulster, okay, still around.
Yeah. Well, it was Ulster Investment Bank. It was the investment part of the wholesale side of the bank, or I worked as a business analyst. So the business analyst is, you know, a classic kind of business analyst role. Today you'd be called a product manager or something.
With your own business cards now.
Yeah. Vice president of product management.
14 years is a decent chunk of time to be in a business, right?
Yeah.
And obviously Relax is a huge success. How long did you sit on the Relax idea in the bank?
I had 1 or 2 other thoughts before Relax. When was this? Would have been the late 90s, right? Yeah, the late 90s. And I actually went out to John Teeling with one of the ideas. He told me he hadn't a clue what I was talking about, and which was fair enough.
What was that one?
It was I was going to buy bandwidth and basically resell it. So it was like setting up an ISP back in the day, where you had to have modems and things, and so I had a wholesale rate, and then I was going to be able to try and resell the bandwidth into businesses at a margin.
Yeah.
And I went out to John, and he, as he does, what age are you now? I'm 36. Is this your first idea? Yeah. I'll see you in 2 years' time when you're on your 3rd idea. And I said, what do you mean, like? And so he sees it as 38 is apparently, allegedly, the time of the impossible transition for most people.
Okay.
And that
38.
38.
Okay,
this is an old theory, right? And we used to
I thought it was
talk
40.
about it. Right. Okay. Maybe. Well, say
2 years out.
Okay. And he used to talk about the impossible transition and kind of said that people will like go through a dilemma as to what they want to be, and he said it has to be you've got to reach the point almost where it has to be a decision point.
Yeah.
And he was right, like, which is kind of irritating that I went back 2 years later and said I was going to set up Relax, and Relax had been brewing in my head for about, I don't know, 9 months, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it was that, like, because people were calling the bank and kind of saying, I want to sell online. And we were sending out terminals, they were going to work. So it was kind of like, how do you fix that? And so, we put forward kind of different proposals. And then I kind of saw that it was very clear that a friend of mine, we sat down actually in a pub and we just had the 3 beer mats. And, the beer mat on the right were the banks that were processing the payments. And the beer mats on the left is the retailers who want to sell online. And we'll be that one in the middle. And we'll make it easy for the banks to they won't have to integrate and interface with thousands of businesses. We'll just do one integration into them, which is what they like, and we'll do it to a standard that they're used to and to security levels and so on that they want. And then we'll give these retailers, access in a very simple way, so they don't have to speak the language that the bank speaks. And it was like, and I was kind of like at that stage we kind of felt, well, it was hard to explain to people at the time.
Yeah.
Because I remember one particular support agency telling me that, like, if you're charging on a transaction basis, aren't you going to need a whole lot of those? Well, yes.
But it's funny how there always seems to be like loads of opportunities, like back then, even around the banks, and compared to the opportunities now with the banks and what people are doing with like companies like Monzo and Revolut and the whole lot. you went from school, so I believe, right, from school straight into setting up a radio station,
Yeah.
right? Like, what made you get into a radio station? Was it just something that you always had a love for, or did you just have a good voice for radio? Or
No. Well, no, I don't think it was. It was that. Just sort of hearing Colm there talk about Relax. It is absolutely amazing the number of successful businesses in Ireland that the business plan was done on beer mats.
Yeah.
You
Well, there's a lot of
and-
beer mats in it.
No, but it does make you think about, what frightens and I think puts people off about doing a business is, these days you're expected to have this very fancy business plan. And, you find that the really successful businesses were sort of made up as they knew there was, a need for it. They had a solution to the problem, but they actually went for it. Whereas now, you get great help from agencies. I'm not saying that, but you go along, but like you have to structure your idea in a way that you can sell it before you've actually structured it. And that's a little bit difficult. And so in the case of a radio station, the plan was from my darling mother was I was going to be a barrister.
Okay.
I didn't have any choice in that, That's what I was going to do. I caused myself a problem getting a good leaving cert, so now I was supposed to be doing law, etc. And I took up a summer job on a pirate radio station. And
From a barrister to a pirate.
oh, sorry, was I? Sorry, I was supposed to go to do it. Yeah, sorry. She just assumed I would sail through and become but that was and I had a brother who my older brother was a solicitor, and it seemed like the right thing, so took this summer job, liked it, etc. And this comes back to the naivety of it. Why an 18-year-old would set up now it's a pirate radio station, so it wasn't that, but like why you would do it and end up employing 40 people, 25 of whom were so awkward, it's unbelievable. I find the smaller the local radio station, the larger the egos. And it was incredible, and yet it was the most exciting thing I've ever done, right? And yet I do remember, I remember coming out of the building we worked at, we ran it from, and looking across at a park across the way. And actually, it was the day there was an assassination attempt made on Pope John Paul II in sort of Rome. And some guy, didn't injure him, but took a shot at him. And I remember we were sort of very busy dealing with that sort of type of news. It's because most people associate pirate radio with a music station. I have, for some weird reason, decided to launch a pirate radio version of Radio 4, BBC Radio 4. But anyway, I was doing that because it was always, I now realise I was very much into news and current affairs. We had a busy day. And I remember coming out and I was seeing some friends playing football. And I forgot, I haven't played football for over a year, and because it was just sort of, and in that moment, I don't want to make a big thing of it, but you sort of realise the loneliness of an entrepreneur.
Especially back then.
But you set up something and so on, and then if it is successful or you're seen to be doing well from it, nearly those people that you've created employment for nearly sort of, why am I getting this? You didn't do it,
you didn't call yourself an entrepreneur back then.
No, we didn't even know the word.
You wouldn't spell it you know what I mean? Like people didn't use that word.
So what would you consider yourself?
A businessman.
Okay.
Yeah, and you would have said you just want to be a businessman. And the whole idea was that if I can make something and sell it for more than it cost me to make it, then that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And does somebody want to buy it? Was the bigger issue perhaps. But I remember for years, I called myself the MD, not the CEO.
Yeah, I heard that.
Because I didn't like that. I still don't, and your point earlier about people coming in with business plans, and they're just like the same as everybody else's business plan.
Yeah. And
somebody gave them the PowerPoint presentation, they're kind of going, Jesus, all the originality's gone from those people, and they're going through the journey and this type of, and they use all these words and say, you're just starting a business.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing, right? And you got to try and work out, is somebody going to buy this stuff that you're making or not, right? And
Do
you
we
think
make
you
it
can
too
make it?
complicated then? Because
Yeah, well, it's
we
like, you
do
know,
though.
it's either going to work or it's
Yeah.
not. You know, and if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world, you know. But like, we now try to put
lot of
in sort
palaver
of,
put around it.
yeah, all of this thing that sort of
Need to be
nearly
there.
tries to sort of, you know, rule out any, you know, chance of failure before you have a go at it.
Yeah.
And sort of, like, you know, you're either sort of into taking risk or you're not. And, you know, if you're an investor then sort of, you know, as I did later on, you know, but it takes a certain type of mind, but you're either prepared to punt or you're not.
We found the problem, like even putting a business plan together, like most people in the room here, is you got your template, right? And it was like 15, 20 pages long, and you're 2 pages in, and you're right, that's me.
And you're stretching
Yeah,
it for
that's
18.
us. So like now you're kind of like, oh my God, what else do we
Yeah.
put into this? And then
Yeah.
you're taking ideas from other people. Oh, they wrote this, so we write
Yeah.
that, and that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's just like kind of fluffing it all out.
But
right?
you also like really important that, and it's hard to do it sometimes, is actually to genuinely work out what you want to be.
Yeah.
And actually, what do you personally want from this? And I always had the dream of actually just being, you know, the captain of the ship. And I don't know why. It was just that feeling that I get when I'm set in the direction, like I become more comfortable, and therefore you become slightly better, maybe, at what you're doing, because it's easier for me to give instruction than it is to take it. Problems. But no, but like that's just me, right? And
Yeah.
I prefer to write the strategy and to really create a vision, and a vision that people sometimes think that because it's a vision, it therefore doesn't need to have clarity. But that's not true. Like, visions can actually be really clear. And the clearer you make your vision, the better it's going to be.
Yeah.
And you know that thing, if you want to make it real, make it clear. And so having clarity of where you want to go, and then sitting around with whoever's in the business with you and saying, do you feel the same way? Do you feel the same way? Do you feel the same way? Or write them all down individually first, and then compare what you've all written down, and see, are you aligned towards like trying to achieve something? And that to me is like, sometimes we forget those basics, like, and you would have done that naturally, you know, when you were starting a business. Like, do you want to do this with me? This is what I'm thinking of doing. Like, we think we can sell it for this and we can buy it for that. It's going to work. Or like, so sometimes I think like those principles get a little bit lost because we're trying to prepare our deck for an investor. You know,
They don't want to see all that either, though.
Yeah, a lot of the time they don't. It's interesting. We interview entrepreneurs every single day. We're based in Shoreditch, and we can see about 10 fintech accelerators from the roof, right? You can just see them dotted around the place.
Yeah.
And we interview a lot of these people, and they raise astronomical amounts of money. We get people, and every day I've raised 15 million, and I just launched 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It kind of has this attitude of, I'll just raise another 10 million to keep us going, and blah, blah, blah. You, in the beginning, the first round of funding didn't go to plan, Colm. The first round of funding fell through, I believe. Tell us a little bit about getting the money for Relax in the beginning.
I think it's one of those things that, like, when you're in business and, you know, you're thinking about, is it lonely? I think, for me, it wasn't so much the loneliness as when you're at the early stages that you can have your best day and your worst day on the same day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you can actually, it can happen to you in the same hour, right? And you can have and what happened to me, any of my experience was that it's amazing 1 second, and then the next minute is a complete disaster. Like, and you have no idea why you even started this, and why did you leave your job? Like, and then 10 minutes later you get a phone call. Oh, brilliant! Somebody's phoning me. It's the wrong number, right? So it's kind of like, it doesn't work. Yeah. And so
I'll be home at
the little,
6.
the little tiny things are hugely important to you.
Yeah.
And we came to an agreement with an angel investor over the commercial terms of the contract. And then when I got the, what do you call it, term sheet or the contract, whatever the words, right, the document, sent it to my lawyers, who said to me, you know, if you want to sign this, you can, but we won't be your lawyers anymore because you're basically handing control. And I know you've left your job because you want to be the guy in control. So this is like going back to work for somebody, So it's not what you actually want. And I said no. But I'd gone home on the Friday saying we got the investment, and then home on the Monday saying we've lost the investment. And it was a friend of mine, John Mooney. He worked out in UCD. Some people may know him. He was a lecturer out there. He's now in the University of Pepperdine over in the States. And John was leaving, emigrating. So he was got a job over there. And he said to me, what's the absolute minimum that you need to get one retailer up and running? So we came up with a list, and it was like 16,000 Irish pounds. That was a thing we had before the euro, right? And Irish 16. So I don't know, what's that? 20 grand in euro.
Yeah.
So 16,000 Irish pounds was kind of like 3 servers. And then I was saying to Gavin earlier on, like, I went to a load of people and asked for the stuff for free. So I got the internet software for free, the firewall license for free, the hosting for free. I got the servers on 18-month credit or whatever it was. And, you know, but we had some genuine expenses as well for stuff that we had to buy. And John gave me the 16 grand and a car, his wife's car.
Yeah,
right?
because they were going to America or something.
Yeah, you didn't need the car, and that was good. But the only problem with the car was that it had a sunroof, and every time you took off, if it had been raining, all the water from the sunroof landed on the passenger seat, which wasn't great. But 15 years later, John got 3.5 million back for the 16 grand.
That's not a bad return.
No, so he's my best friend. And we so it was so John, that minimum amount of money transformed us from talking about what we had to actually doing a live demo of DirectSki, selling online, and being able to take credit and debit cards on their website, and we were the processor.
Yeah.
So it meant that we were live. The story had been validated. There was somebody out there willing to pay us for what we were actually doing. And that, like, John
what
was...
did that feel like, being able to
John was the guy who pushed me to that. And then, sorry, I don't want to go on for too long, but what was really good was that another great friend of mine who's passed away last year, unfortunately, and Michael, he was my boss in the bank. So he would have known me, I suppose, probably better than I knew myself in some ways. And Michael came back to me at the end of 2001 and said, you know, now that you've got, I think, 6 or 7 customers up and running at this stage with John's money, he said, I think you should raise some, you know, some proper money. And he was, and Michael, it was amazing because, and again, it's a really, when you look back, you realize how sensible this is, but at the time, you're not actually planning it like this. And Michael went to other people, and Michael said, I'm investing in Colm's company, I think you should too. And that in itself, because he's got credibility, right, and he's got a network, right, and he knew loads of people, and we rented out, but Arthur Cox were very generous, and they gave us their conference room, and we brought people into the conference room 2 nights, and we made a pitch, myself and Owen, who started the business with me, and we had a baseball game was on, I did the presentation, and then up behind the screen, Owen flicked onto this monitor that we had on the system, and it started flicking as all the different transactions were coming through. Yeah. And somebody said to us, why is that going like that? He said, because there's a baseball game in the US going on right now, and one of our customers is selling subscriptions, right, for that game, right? And one of the guys, so you're making money right now because there's something happening in America? We said, yeah. And again, you don't think, like, you don't go in and say, well, I have an international business that doesn't have any boundaries geographically and all that. You don't say that. And you didn't even think like that at the time. Just saying, well, yeah, and I just need loads more of them, like, because, like, we need loads of transactions, right? You get it. And then Michael was sitting at the table and takes out his checkbook. These were little bits of paper we used to write on, right? And he took it, and he says, I don't know about you guys, but I'm in. And I went, Michael, yeah, Egypt, like, they all know that you know me, right?
Oh.
Like, this is like
I like your style, sir. How much?
Yeah. And but I walked out with, I think, £160,000 that night.
Which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the guys just, and we got 320,000 in the end.
The 16,000 that you raised at the beginning, right? How much were you looking for before that? How much did you need? Because you know everyone's got
we looked for 120,000.
Initially, first round?
Yeah, and that's the one that, 100,000 I think it was, or 115,000. It was 100,000 thereabouts that we had got and then lost.
Okay.
John gave us 16 grand and we went live.
Yeah.
And then we raised 320 grand.
Because the only reason I ask is because you probably see it a little bit more with the whole Dragons Den thing, where someone comes in and goes, I need $500,000 to get this idea off the ground. And if you look back, like when our parents were all setting up companies, it wasn't going raising money with investors. It was real kind of like a loan down to the bank. And you wouldn't go down to the bank going, I need 3 million. You know, it's real kind of like, well, you couldn't afford it.
Some people did.
Yeah, well, maybe they do, right? But back then you wouldn't go down, like, and you hear it all the time, like, I'm looking for $1 million. And you're, oh, come on, like, what do you really need? 16,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see that? Like, do you think that the valuations nowadays are just like grossly overvalued?
I'm not so sure, you know, because...
well, then I'm wrong.
No, but sometimes... no, but what's really frustrating is sometimes it's easier to raise very large amounts of money than it is, you know. So.
So go for the more then.
Well, look, you know, I know, you know, that if I wanted to raise money for some property play in Ireland, but now you'd have to have a track record, right? If I went to London, you know, and I would be speaking to people who only speak to people for 10 million up that's easier to do than you're looking for 50,000 or 100,000 or $250,000 for you know, a good startup. You know, and that, you know, that deal will be probably backed against an asset and stuff like that. But you know, so what I've learned later on is, you know, so you know, you're operating at a different level that the higher the figure is, and people make and you know, they've got all, like there's an awful lot of money in the world at the moment, right? You know, we keep hearing about credit crunches, but there's money, and people need to get a return on it. And if you're lucky enough to know where to go for it, and you have something to spend it on to guarantee a return, by the way. So you know, there's that. But here's the thing I can tell you from Dragon's Den. Now, let's be clear. We're talking about a reality TV show, and you know, a hell of a good sort of concept and all of that, right? Yeah. But you know,
as good as Behind the Curtain, or
well, almost. But you know, I don't mean to sort of take away from Dragon's Den, but what Colm is talking about, that is real serious stuff that turned into a very successful business.
That's what I mean.
What Dragon's Den in Ireland was, you know, a program that came on in the mother of all recessions, when people were losing their jobs and were doing amazing things like willing to risk their redundancy money to set up a thing. And sometimes they come in and you'd know that idea is mad. I was really concerned for the person that were putting their redundancy money into, you know, a system for washing dogs or
breeding
something.
mice. Or
Yeah, because I've been there myself,
or rabbits
right?
even.
And so on. So, you know, I know what it's like at the end, where people just want, you know, and they just need a little bit of money. But here's the thing I'm absolutely certain about after 10 years of Dragon's Den. The figure that people have in their business plan, we have never come close to it. So we've either undershot it to a disastrous failure, or it's been multiples of 10 or sort of 20. I seem to remember, I think, the first order for Tan Organic,
which you were investing in.
Was the year 2 turnover.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Wow.
So like it either goes rockets, explodes, and that's what, you know, venture capitalists, we're all dreaming of
But is that also down to the TV?
Potential explosive growth. That's that, you know, because the TV program hypes it, so it does all the marketing for you, I suppose, in that way. But you know, it makes you very jaundiced about people saying, oh no, we have to have X to get this off the ground. And like, you know, when Colm and I were chatting earlier, you know, and he said it here again, you know, I'm so conscious of that. If you reach like, I actually worry about startups having money, because they nearly, God knows what they'll spend it on. You know what I mean? Whereas when you don't have it, you always find the solution.
What's really good too is that, like, the one that we don't seem to use as much here is the family and friends. Right? The family and friends, it used to be called the BES, I don't know what it's called now. But like, I did a family and friends BES, Business Expansion Scheme, which I did myself. I got onto the website, I filled up the form, I sent the letter to revenue. I didn't pay anybody, right, because it was that simple to do at the time. Everybody that invested in that 320,000 round, they could put in 5 grand, 10 grand, 50 grand, whatever they wanted to. They got back whatever 50% of that in a tax break. So if you put in 10 grand, you actually only put in 5, and they got back whatever 1.2 million or something, right, for that 5,000 investment.
Nice.
Now that's a BES round. Now subsequently over the years, that program was changed.
That's EIS.
It's EIS now, and it's there's less money going into that, almost in absolute terms, from what I understand, right, over time. And our office is in Shoreditch in London as well, right? And you go to London, And everybody's doing startup. And everybody at the startup stage will go to family and friends. And family and friends is a completely legitimate and utterly underutilized way to raise money. Because the family and friends will look at you and say, what are you doing with my money, you prick? Like, like, you know, I need to know, like, am I going to get it back? Like, because I want it back, like, you know. And it's
brand new MacBooks.
It's like, I'll give you a, you know, I can give you a car, I can give you a couch, I can give you a chair, I can give you, you don't need to waste your money on that.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I love that family and friends round. I think that's a really useful round.
It keeps it more real.
And I think that you've got people who can help you, people who can engage you, and they're only putting in maybe, you know, they might put in 5 grand, 10 grand, whatever it might be each. And I think that, like, I just see it in the UK so often.
Could that be a
early
disaster?
stage?
As in, could it cause friction between family members and friends?
No, I mean, if you're investing, like, you're on the basis that you're prepared to lose it all. I mean, that's the game, right? But they're investing in you at that stage, not the business. It's you that they're investing in. And that's
so as long as they
difference.
come back with idea number 3.
Yeah,
Exactly.
No, but you know, when it's family and friends, I'm not saying you would treat other investors differently, but you really do have your family's skin in the game, you know? Now, look, you know, I don't want to overstate, I hear what Colm is saying. I don't want to overstate that because that's all very, like, I always feel I was lucky. I was brought up in a business family, right? So, you know, I'd have to say with my various madcap business ventures initially, if I was stuck for 5 grand, I could rattle some ante for it, you know, because, you know, I was brought up with these, with these, I didn't mean it like that. But, no, I was brought up with these amazing women, you know, and it really, you know, it was only a few years ago for International Women's Day, AIB asked me to come along and explain why do I invest in women and not men. And I thought that was a little bit unfair. I didn't think I had been investing in women. But look, the short answer is there is a difference. When I invest in a female entrepreneur, I'm more, and this is a wild generalization, sorry, but you know, I feel my money is safer and I'll get a return because they won't bet the house entirely, whereas I think guys will.
More
you
know. With money.
And by the way, remember, mine now is a different setup. If you're in venture capital, okay, even on something like Dragon's Den, success comes very rarely, and it's got to come. If it does come rarely, so spectacularly, it pays for all the cock-ups, right? So the like, you know, people know the numbers, but let me break them down for you because it's important that people understand how it works. So out of every 10 you'll invest in, 1 will be successful, and if it's spectacularly successful, great. And you know, I've been lucky with a few that, wow, the return was fantastic. Can I tell you, I needed it, right? Because 7 out of every 10 fail, and I'm delighted about that. The quicker they fail, the better, right?
The less you invest in at the time.
What I suppose the reason I was on Dragon's Den for 10 years is that, you know, my book over those 10 years was positive and ended up because, you know, it's ridiculous to be put into a studio and have to make a decision instantly about whether, you know, but that's, I liked the excitement of that because in the real world of venture capital, you do so much tire kicking. At the end, you just have a sore foot, you know, so.
So was it skiing or that?
Yeah. But here's the thing, 1 succeeds and 7 fails. But whether you're going to end up positive or negative on your book of investment is determined by the other 2. And those other 2 are always about to turn the corner. And it's how long you waited for the corner or didn't. It's a very tough one to, you know, just, do I pump more into this? And when I said earlier on, you know, the figures you know that you put in, somebody comes into Dragons Den, we need 80,000 to do it. You know, I'll give you an example of one, a food company, 80,000 investment, that's fine. Gosh, we got a listing with Tesco. I think the packaging for a full listing UK Tesco, which was brilliant, like, you know, but I think the packaging alone for the product was sort of an outlay of €240,000. You know, it was around 200,000 sterling. You know, so like, you know, now they never expected it to go that big, but that was, you know, that. And by the way, that in the end, didn't turn out to be a successful in business, but it was a great product. But unfortunately, the power of the supermarkets is such, you know, they can bring out their version of your new product. So it's that thing of, you know, investing. So, you know, you nearly know from day one the ones that are going to be explosively successful. You know, it takes off. You know, and you've got the, and it's always the promoter. It's never the business idea. You got the good promoter, the others fall. But then, as I said, it's that one. Do I kill this one? Do I, you know? And it's very difficult, you know, when people are back looking for a second round funding. And sorry, I know I'm going on, but I just wanted to come back to the business expansion scheme, right? Because again, I benefited from that because then there was pirate, and then I came back and I raised money to set up a radio, a licensed radio station.
Yeah.
What was that? That was 89, was it? Yeah. And the wonderful thing about the business expansion scheme was the 50% back. Because this is what was great about it, you know. And I've said it to so many politicians. I'd love to bring back that version of it, right? Yeah. Because everybody thinks that was a successful business because of what it was sold for later on, right? But can I tell you, initially, it went so close to going under. But because, and by the way, it wasn't you know, I think each of the investors put in 110K, I think it was, right? So like we were talking about $500,000, it was 600,000 over 5 people, right? The local business people I recruited, and so there was this. But they actually said in their heads, we're putting in 55, you know, because we're getting the. But actually, when I went for the second round of funding, because they'd already sort of committed in their head, you know what I mean? I think that was a big psychological thing, that you nearly had 2 bites in that old business expansion scheme. Then they changed it for their own reasons, and I don't think it's ever worked as well since, you know?
Just one thing before we go back to Dragons Den real quick. There's a famous scene in Dragons Den where the guy comes out to pitch quite confident in the pitch, and you get quite emotional at the guy pitching and shed a tear or two. I don't know if you did.
Yeah.
And the Man of Steel sheds tears.
Yeah, well, look, anybody who knows me knows I'm a pussycat. No, but like, you know, gosh.
Tell us a bit about that, because it's interesting.
But my wife, by the way, who loves me dearly, I believe, but she gets annoyed with me watching X Factor, I cry. You know, so like, you know, but you know, there's been 3 bad singers on that. She's brilliant. You know what I mean? Well, so like, you know, I'm but no, but you know, a lot of that's editing in television as well. They can show you whatever.
You just
way
had
they
something
want.
in your eye.
No. What? No, it was my good friend Jason. He sort of was pitching his bit, because we're still to this day the best of friends. But he's pitching the business, and suddenly he talks about a situation where, you know, big orders came in. He sort of he's promised the money from an investor. It didn't materialize at the last moment. That person pulled the plug, and I think we've all been there. You know, you talk about the great moments and the disasters where just life is sucked out of you and your business in a moment, you know. And as he started talking about it, he got emotional. But I had a situation where, you know, I can still remember the figure. It was 27,000 suddenly evaporated on me, that, you know, I had to have at a certain time by 5 o'clock on a Thursday, and it didn't happen. And we've all been there, you know. And that's why, you know, Colm is very good to other startups now and has a reputation of that, as a lot of people who've enjoyed his success do, because he's very helpful to, you know, people starting up, particularly those in the fintech area, where he can really give them a steer. And I think you do that, like we all do. You appreciate the help and assistance you got when you were starting out, absolutely. You know, and you know, you never forget those people who helped you. And I remember, you know, as a young business person in my early 20s, you know, I got great help and assistance from a great business person in my hometown called Phelan McCluskey. And to this day, he says, look, I didn't really, because it probably wasn't much to him giving me 900 quid at one stage.
Yeah,
but for me, as regards that business, that was the difference between surviving and not surviving, at least that month anyway.
Well, then, if you do help a lot of startups out there, and we know both of you do, right? Are you brutally honest? Like if someone comes along, like they do, going, I've got this great idea.
I'm not, but
you're not. Okay, so you won't turn around and go, oh, it's not good.
No, I well, I wouldn't want to be. No, I would try to be supportive, right? And you would try to maybe steer a point, but very important that you don't. And I try not to give advice.
Okay.
Right, because I think it's really important, because I don't really know them or what they're doing or what they want to do or what they want to be. So you just maybe you pick a story or two or an experience that you've had, and you just relay that to them, right? And you let them take from that if you think that's relevant to them. So I met a chap today actually, and young guys from Trinity, and I was just trying to tell him to think more about the vision, and again think more about, and actually we have another email actually today from another guy, and it was more about the networking at the start and going to people and soliciting help, right?
Yeah.
And you got to get the balance right, because you don't want to be pissing people off either, and you don't want to be going in and annoying them, or meeting them for coffee, and then they've nothing to ask you. And we were talking about this earlier, because like you don't want to waste time either. So you've got to try and find a nice balance. So you need to constantly circulate through your network, but you need to do it in a kind of a very efficient and organized way, so that you don't waste people's time, right? And if you've something to ask for it, because people would probably appreciate that. So rather than just going and generally meeting somebody because you want to have a catch up, right? That's not really what you're there for. But if you want to, if you have a very specific question. So one guy was actually in a particular place, and he was more maybe downs than ups at the moment, and he asked me what did I do back in the day, and I said one of the things I learned very early on was that when I had a bad day, before I went home, I would make 2 more appointments in my diary, right? So that when I'm going home, I'm thinking about those appointments and not the bad news I just got.
Oh, okay.
Right? So I'm trying to condition myself always to have something positive in the diary. So I would actually not leave until I got those 2 appointments made, right? So I might have to make 10 phone calls or 10 emails to get them, but I've got 2 extra things in the diary for next week. So I'm feeling better, because I'm thinking about how I'm going to make that pitch, or how I'm going to do it, or what I'm going to do. So and not to worry about maybe what's just happened.
It's interesting, because we read and we were watching a few interviews that you did, and you had a dream at one stage to open a garden centre, right? Before Relax.
Yeah.
And you exited.
I didn't know if that was a business or if that was just because you wanted to own one.
It was a dream, wasn't it? Like,
yeah.
But you exited Relax at 115 million euros. And there's no garden centre yet. Do you still want to do it?
There's a large garden though.
So there is a garden centre.
There's none of the flowers for sale.
No, no, there's no garden centre yet. There might be still. I love it, and but I'm just remarkably busy. We have just so many things that are, I suppose, exciting, and the opportunities that have been created from the sale are just immense. And thankfully I still feel kind of like, willing and happy and just really enthusiastic to get up in the morning and to go and do those things. So while I still have that energy, I want to do it, because I don't think that'll be there forever. So I really enjoy what we're doing, and I love the challenge of it. I love the blank page, about how we're going to try and sort this out. And the thing that always, I keep going back to it, which is the vision, but I just, that's my drug, if you like, because I'm hooked on it, that if I get this vision of what I think something can be, I don't let that go, and it just inspires me all the time to try and move forward and to try and get towards that point. And there are huge opportunities still, and you're not doing it, it's not for money, and it's not for anything. It's just because that's what I do. That's my job. I really love it, and I'm very fortunate to have a job that I love doing.
Yeah.
And I love working with people, and I love building that idea. And as I going back to the principles of every time we get a new customer, and you get a great feeling of satisfaction that you've made something that somebody wants to buy, and that's, to me, still gives me the same thrill as it did when I sold the newspaper. It's it still is a great buzz around that you can actually make something. And then you can sell it, because it's difficult, really difficult to do it. And we've been playing with fire for years, and it's only
literally,
and it's only now in the last 2 years that we've really found you know, how to get to market and how to scale it up, you know.
Guys, just before we end up, right, your whole thing was the garden centre was like the ambition, the retirement plan, right? Before we finish up, what was your garden centre? Was it bring rabbits or mice or anything like that back?
No, but you know, you always have a few business ideas that don't go away. Okay. You know, and they stand the test of time. Yeah. And you're just saying, yeah, is this, you know, the one thing I've learned about sort of business is timing is probably the biggest factor. You know, I've seen businesses that were successful and had they been launched at a different time. Some businesses actually only succeeded that I know about because they were launched in the recession. Yeah. Believe it or not, you know, they wouldn't have worked in a boom time. So just in case you think, you know, that couldn't be the case, henparty.ie, phenomenally successful business, right? Look, I know it worked for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons it worked was because there was a whole load of five-star hotels around the country now owned and ran by NAMA, and they needed to get revenue. So Kate Hyde, the promoter there, could do amazing deals and get you, put your hen party in a five-star hotel for €99 for 2 nights, right? You know, during the boom time, they wouldn't have even allowed a hen party in. But if NAMA now have a manager in running that hotel, and you can have 8 parties in the Lyrath Hotel and hen parties in the Lyrath Hotel on a Friday or Saturday night, that means you have 150 women in your bar, which means you have 300 lads from Kilkenny now. Just happened to go to the pub, you know. Oh yeah, let's go out to Lyrath, you know. They wouldn't have, right? So, you know, that business was just sort of came at the right time because in a recession, people go to concerts and treat themselves. They might be finding life difficult, they might have money, but to say, Mary's getting married in August, I'm not going to miss her hen party. I know her from when she was 12. So hen parties that Kate started, and you know, a big portal website for Marketplace. So, you know, there's that. So I have one or two.
Your dream.
No.
Hen parties.
I have about 2 dreams at the moment. One is such a counterplay, and by the way, if I told you all, I'd have to kill you. One is such a counterplay, you know, it nearly goes. It's very opposite to where sort of media is moving at the moment, and yet. So I'm just sort of going. Yeah, it's a media play, but it's a sort of, you know, where everything is online at the moment. This would sound old-fashioned, but I like the idea, and people seem to be warming to it.
How much are you looking for?
I'd say to get it there would take about 2 million. So
not the 16,000.
But you know, so that's you know. But like I shouldn't be, because you know I might do it, you know, because there's just a few things in play at the moment. But I want to do something myself again, you know, rather than investing in others. But I suppose the reason I sort of started investing in others was I just don't think I'm good enough at the operations of a business. So, you know, the startup, funding it, getting it up, getting it running, marketing, etc. And when it's up, I'm not the sort of guy who'll stay there with the shoulders of the wheel and run it and watch the cents and the pennies, you know. And so, like, I just love doing startups. So, you know, that's why I've operated in this area. So investing in businesses was more interesting to me, you know. And like, you know, Dragon's Den is, I shouldn't say small money, but, you know, outside of the den, sort of, you know, my first investment was, you know, in a company here in Dublin, it was £1 million, when that was a lot of money, you know. And I was the sole, you know, I sort of backed somebody and things like that. But, you know, I would have never been able to run that business the way the principal in that business ran it very successfully, and it turned out to be good for me. But, you know, so I said I need to find people like that, you know, rather than sort of do it myself.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to keep an eye out for this media company.
It's a newspaper, isn't it?
Yeah, it must be.
Stab in the dark.
I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying anything.
Tight-lipped.
It's definitely not online. Anyway, look, guys, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's not online.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It means a lot to all of us. Gavin Duffy, Colm Lyon.
Huge round of applause, guys. Thank you so much.
also, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. As we said, this is the end of season 1. Season 1 is now over. It's the last behind the curtain, but we are coming back for season 2. So make sure to keep an eye online on what's happening.
Netflix.
We are. And we're coming back with sponsors and VCs. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you.